So welcome everybody. I've been excited about blockchain, Bitcoin, distributed ledger, all these words flying around. So I want to do a little webinar on it and then tell you a little bit about something I'm doing at the end to see if you are interested. So let's just get started right now. So let's talk a little bit about what in the world this whole Bitcoin blockchain thing is anyway, and why is it a big deal? And later on, I'm going to give you some examples of the way this technology will change the world, ways to get involved with this market if you have not already, and my own experience since my 44th birthday in September. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about Smart Fund One. Then we'll take some questions. So we've talked a bit about this on my podcast, but going back a little bit, this whole phenomena, this whole idea behind this new asset class, which is distributed ledger technology, really started in 2009. And there was a white paper published by a person or entity. It's an anonymous person or entity known as Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who it is. I guess, except for the person who wrote it or the people who wrote it. And they introduced this white paper, and it introduced the concept of the Bitcoin blockchain. Hold on just a second. It looks like, are you having problems here, Aaron? I'm seeing it, I presume hasn't started, or is my computer? Let's see here. I'll try to refresh. Okay, good. All right, good. Just moving on. So Bitcoin was introduced ultimately, as you may or may not know, for the purpose of creating a digital currency that would solve the problem of double spending without the need of third-party trusted authority. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, how do we make digital transactions today? And we use Visa, we may use PayPal, we use the bank. For some transactions, you might be using escrow.com. But the point is that there's always a middleman that makes the transaction legitimate, or sort of keeps the score, so to speak. And when we talk about a ledger, it's effectively the middleman. The middleman is known as the ledger. That's the way I like to think of the ledger, right? And in this model, there is one central authority, and that central authority is the ledger. So why do we need a central authority? Why do we need a ledger in the first place, or one central authority? Well, for the most part, it's to make sure that transactions are recorded and they're permanent, right? To make sure transactions are not corrupted, to make sure that those funds are actually transferred from one place to another, as it is promised to have been done. And for example, in the case of the internet, you can't send somebody, $1,000 and then send the same $1,000 to somebody else, because you have to have some sort of central authority that's keeping checks and balances. And in this regard, even though we live in this world that we think of as this, cyber world, this online world, for the most part, up until now, up until blockchain and distributed ledger technology, it's really been no different than keeping an old-fashioned bookkeeper's ledger, right? The only difference is we just do things online, and we just settle things the old-fashioned way, though, with the central authority. So, of course, we've talked now that, generally speaking, up to now, we've always used a central authority. So what's wrong with having a central authority? Well, first of all, let's think of some things. The authority may charge fees, and they may not be reasonable. I mean, sometimes if you look at Visa, it's 2 to 3% per transaction. In my world of healthcare businesses, there's Care Credit, which sometimes will take 7 or 8%. Wall Street makes trillions of dollars off of you and me simply through fees. The fees simply by trading for you, by making little trades, taking a little penny here, taking a little penny there for the trades. And the next thing you know, it's a massive industry which does nothing but leech money from you. So a central authority, also a central authority can be corrupt or have the ability to manipulate the market. So let's just talk in terms of manipulating the market, because I wouldn't say that the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank is, I won't go as far as to say that they are corrupt, but they manipulate the market, right? They change the rules when they need to. They print money when they need to, right? If there's only one ledger, the ledger can be hacked too. That's the other thing. So if you look at, large database breaches in recent years of, I think there was in Target, and then there's healthcare data breaches. Even we had one in one of our offices, an attempt at a healthcare database breach where somebody tried to actually kidnap the database and then sent us a ransom note, believe it or not. So Bitcoin ultimately addresses the problems by using what's known as a distributed ledger. And this distributed ledger is part of a technology that Satoshi Nakamoto released and showed the world called blockchain. And I specifically keep saying distributed ledger technology because blockchain is only one of them. And that's one of the incredibly promising areas of investment, potentially even in this year. If some of you heard me talking about Hashgraph and watch the videos I've sent on that, if that happens, that could be the new thing. But anyway, the idea ultimately with blockchain and distributed ledger technology in general is that that transactions occur within this ecosystem of the blockchain and are recorded not by one central authority the way it's done now, but literally by thousands of nodes, or these nodes are basically supercomputers around the world. So in doing this, Bitcoin eliminates the central authority. So these records are constantly updated with a copy of every transaction in the ecosystem recorded on each node, right? So now there's not just one place. So that makes these transactions permanent. They can't be corrupted by one single source. They can't be changed by one single source. And these transactions cannot be, they can't be hacked, right? Because you'd have to go to thousands and thousands of computers to hack it. And so there's this idea that Bitcoin can be hacked. It's never been hacked. Platforms where trading occurs has been hacked, but never Bitcoin. And so within this ecosystem of Bitcoin and the coins, there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Basically, there is transfer directly from one person to another. There is no PayPal. There's no credit card. There's no nothing. There's one transfer from my address to your address, and there's no need for a central authority to give it its blessing. And that is why Bitcoin has exploded. So if you look at this graph, you're seeing tremendous growth. And, we're looking at right now, of course, Bitcoin's down around 10 grand today. And we've had some backing off in the market. Well, it's a great buying opportunity. People kind of think of this in a silly way because, really, if you look at where we've gone even since September, we're still up like 40, 50%. But at any rate, the point is there's a finite amount of Bitcoin and there is an increasing number of people buying. It's increasing the market capitalization, and therefore Bitcoin is going up. So that is effectively Bitcoin. Now, I started specifically very, very specific on Bitcoin because that's what people have heard of. Most people have heard of Bitcoin at this point. And so what I'm trying to do is kind of take this and work backwards a little bit because, Bitcoin is really, an example of what this entire blockchain or distributed ledger technology can do for us. So for the example of Bitcoin, if transactions can be done directly from one person to another person or another person to a company, do we even need banks anymore? Do we need Wall Street? Well, one of the projects out there right now, which is doing I think they might be done now. They were in the middle of an initial coin offering, which is effectively the same as a IPO, is a company that Patrick Byrne, who is the CEO of Overstock.com, started a project called T0, which might be the first step to essentially replacing Wall Street or creating a digital ledger technology version of distributed ledger technology version of the New York Stock Exchange. I actually did not end up investing in this. I do think people who did invest in this are going to make money. I just didn't have the patience for it because they had a lockup period, I think, of several months. And this this particular space, several months, is a lifetime. So anyway, what we could see in the future is that coins or tokens would replace company stocks, and you could essentially again eliminate the financial banking industry, the market makers, because it would all be done on a distributed ledger, and therefore you would effectively be this exchange would be part of something you owned. Really, I mean, it would be something that was not just in control from the market makers anymore. And you see some of these things happening already. You've got, I think, Kodak did an offering recently as well. So what else could this kind of technology be good for? Because it's really not about just money. I started with Bitcoin because Bitcoin is what everybody knows, and Bitcoin has a very clear idea, concept. The storage of wealth ultimately is what it is, right? It's like gold. It's digital gold or whatever you want to call it. But really, if you take one step back from Bitcoin, you have blockchain, and then this broader idea of the distributed ledger. So what could you use that for? Well, you could use distributed ledger technology for anything that has a middleman, right? So people talk about Uber a lot of times as, the Uber of the industry, because Uber destroyed the taxi business, right? Well, decentralization of services, you're creating these peer-to-peer services, will ultimately destroy Uber. I have no doubt about that. What other industries? Music and video. We've got Spotify. Well, what if artists could directly license their music out to consumers, take all the profits, cut out the middleman? It's not a what if, it's a when. Energy consumption, right? There is a project out there right now. I own some Power Ledger, for example. This is a direct contact between consumers and producers of electricity, of energy, right? So now, do you need a power company? No, well, maybe not. Maybe you just need coins. Maybe you just need tokens of energy, and that you're buying them directly from the producer. And what about buying and selling computing power and cloud storage? Well, there's another project called Storage, which I'm invested in. This is real projects that are underway. This is not stuff that's, pie in the sky stuff, right? And this is, I should point out, again, this is why this is not, as some people have called it, another tulip mania. Tulips, you couldn't do much with tulips. Look at what we're doing here, right? We're changing everything. How about cybersecurity? Data cannot be hacked on a decentralized immutable ledger. I mean, in theory, that's a very general thing I just said, and I'm not going to get too deep into that. But certainly when some of the advanced, 2.0 or 3.0 ledgers come out like Hashgraph, that is going to be a fact. Social media. Okay, who needs Facebook when you can create, your own social networks that are not controlled by a central owner or authority, right? I mean, Facebook is basically just a conduit by which you're having this conversation with their friends. What's the point of them? Their point is just to basically take your information and sell it to advertisers, right? But now if you have a central network, well, you don't have Facebook, but you have a decentralized social network. Now you have something completely different. Now you could potentially even direct profits to yourself by inviting advertisements that are okay for you to see. How about that? Crazy, right? But I'm talking about real projects that are underway. Some of them, I'm not specifically naming them, but there are things that I'm hearing about. So smart contracts. So Nick Szabo invented this concept called smart contracts, which are effectively, they're effectively self-executing contracts. And what that means is, okay, so what do we do normally in real estate? You probably know real estate because you're involved with my group, but real estate, when you go to a closing, you got to have somebody who brings the, clean deed, you have the escrow, you have all that. You can do all of that through a smart contract, right? The only reason those people exist is to make sure that the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and that, that everybody does what they're saying. But the smart contracts can essentially eliminate that. By the way, Szabo is also rumored. Many people think that Nick Szabo is actually Satoshi Nakamoto, a little bit of crypto, what do you want to call it? a crypto rumor out there. So anyway, so with smart contracts, say goodbye to the escrow and title companies. Healthcare, okay? Lots of doctors and dentists out there, right? So healthcare, imagine having all your medical records stored on a blockchain that you control and that cannot be hacked. Now, okay, not only do you have your own information with you, but no one can hack it anymore. All you do is you send your information directly to your provider, so they have the information, and that's it, right? I mean, so it's one-to-one. You don't have to worry about them storing your information somewhere where it gets hacked. So that is the power in healthcare. And there's a healthcare project happening right now that addresses that. By the way, I have a bunch of dentists in this group. There is a super a great project. I won't spend a lot of time on it, called DentCoin, as in dentist, and has a tremendous opportunity. So look it up. That might be of something that's of interest to you. So ultimately, what I'm getting at here is that distributed ledger technology will fundamentally change our lives the same way that the internet did. And that someday is not far in the future. Distributed ledger technology will be everywhere, and you won't even realize it happened until it's already there. Now, most of you are old enough where you remember that one day you walked into a library, say in college like I did, and there were people doing email, and you're like, what's that? And the next thing you know, everybody's doing email. And the next thing you know, you hear about Amazon, and you're buying books on Amazon for med school like I was. And the next thing you know, the internet just happened, right? It just happened. That's what's going to happen with DLT. So knowing that, doesn't it make sense to have some exposure to this technology when we know it's coming and we can still get in early? So how do you get exposure? Now, this is something that I've spent a lot of time looking into, and I've looked at a lot of the major hedge funds, and certainly, the big ones are like Blockchain Capital, for example, with Brock Pierce. All of them have $1 million minimal entry. So if that's you, then, maybe it's worth doing. I don't know. That's something that you should look into. There are also funds like Bitwise Management, which, I don't think is a bad way to go at all. That's an ETF model that tracks the top coins. Now, the thing is that if you do that, though, you might as well just take an hour or two, save yourself the fees, and because none of this is all that hard to do. And what I'm planning to do is over the next week or two, I'm just going to have a really basic course on how to, buy a little bit of cryptocurrency and then to, buy some other altcoins on one platform that pretty much anybody can get on. And you can do that, and you can get all your, top 10 coins. Just do that and follow it. I mean, you don't have to give money to, a fund to do that for you. And that's one of the great things about this area, is that, sort of democratization of so much of this, right? And so how do you find what the top coins are? Well, just go to coinmarketcap.com, and that'll tell you the top coins as of today by market capitalization. So again, you could simply go to, and again, I'll send an email about this with a video, but basically you could go to coinbase.com, buy either, I would either just buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then go to one of the platforms and buy, the top 10 currencies in coinmarketcap.com. I mean, that's basically one way you can get broad exposure, and that's not a bad way to do it at all. I just said this, Bittrex Binance, for example. Now, if you're going to buy, more, if you're going to buy, say, $75,000 or more at a time, I'd recommend using a platform like Genesis platform. Where do you store the stuff? Again, this has been all the stuff I've been learning last several months, but the safest way is to buy a hardware wallet to store your coins. There's a wallet that I use called Ledger. I find very useful. And if you do that, I mean, you're really safe, So again, if you look up how to do all this stuff on YouTube, you can be up and running in literally just a couple of hours. So what do you invest in? I mean, most of the time, in terms of what you're hearing about with, when you hear on the news, CNBC and all that, they're just talking about Bitcoin, right? That's all they really talk about is Bitcoin. Once in a while, you might hear about Ethereum. Why is that? Well, until 2017, Bitcoin, which really started it all, right, had an 85% or more, majority of the market capitalization of all the cryptocurrencies until 2017. But now, as of January 2018, we're talking about mid-30s in terms of the overall percentage of market capitalization. Now, the overall cryptocurrency market is growing exponentially. I mean, like $1 billion a month. It's crazy, right? And right now it's over $700 billion, and it's just growing exponentially, right? So based on that and the fact that the institutional players, not just the hedge funds, but large trading platforms that are being produced so that you can start trading Bitcoin for corn, things like that, they're being produced right now. In fact, there's an ICO that I'm going to be participating in that is going to be creating that first platform. Now, Bitcoin, like I said, it is the mother of the coins right now, and it's likely to continue to appreciate significantly in 2018. And again, it's because the institutional players are just starting to get in. But because of this, because of the massive, continued market capitalization, I personally, and again, I'm not giving you market advice, I'm not giving you investing advice, but what I would tell you is it's hard to imagine Bitcoin not reaching $30,000 to $40,000 at some point within the next 12 months. And that's 2 to 3 times where it is now, but it's not as much as the altcoins are going to appreciate. Now, what do I mean by altcoins in the first place? Well, the altcoins, it's short for alternative coins. So for the most part, when people talk about altcoins, they're really talking about anything that's not blockchain, or it's not a Bitcoin or Ethereum. Now, the biggest growth in cryptocurrencies will not occur in the top 10 coins, in my opinion. It's the biggest growth will be in coins that are not in the top 10 as of today, but will be there a year from now. Now, let me give you an example of that. Again, everyone got really excited about Ripple, right? And you saw a bunch of people buying at $2.50, $3, and appreciated by 20% in 2017. At one point, it was over $3. It'll go back to there, but understand, I bought Ripple at 20 cents. Right? I bought Ripple at 20 cents. So that's when you want to buy. You don't want to buy once the cat's out of the bag, right? That's the whole idea. The altcoins are where this, where this huge growth potential really is. So let me go back to my experience again on this, because, the funny thing about being in the crypto space is that it's so new and it's so young that you can become a relative expert in very, very short time, a very, very short time. There is a lot to learn, and I'm just excited about this. This is like my hobby. It used to be just football. Now it's football and cryptocurrency. So I actually entered this market. It was on my 44th birthday, which was in September. And it was after I went to a mastermind meeting. Some of you know I'm part of this Genius Network group of Joe Polish. And it was, there was some people talking about it who were really into this, that it just blew my mind. I didn't realize what was happening. So I literally, I left there and I was committed to learning everything I could about this area because I was and I am convinced that I would regret it if I did not. So, here's the thing. I was broke. I was a broke college kid during the rise of the internet. And when the greatest buying opportunity in the real estate history occurred after 2008, the 2008 meltdown, I just started making a little bit of money. So didn't get to take full advantage of the opportunity. And I decided, you know what? I am not going to miss this one. So on September 8th, my birthday, again, I bought $50,000 of Ethereum for $295. By the way, I don't know what it's at right now, but when I wrote this a few days ago, it's about $1,200. It's probably about just over 1,000 now because all this nonsense going on with Tether, mostly for those of you who know cryptos, it's all going to pass. Anyway, then I invested into another ICO, which is, again, an initial coin offering that effectively is like an initial public offering, accepting coins. This ICO was recommended to me from a crypto insider friend of mine. Recommended at one point that 50,000 turned into $4 million. Now, sometimes you got to know when to sell, right? But this time, anyway, it's still doing extremely well. It's not $4 million anymore, but I still 10x'd on that one. Now, since then, I have done what I always do when I see opportunities. I've studied for hundreds of hours. I've networked and surrounded myself with crypto insiders. I've even invested in a hybrid crowd and artificial intelligence technology to assist me. That's will cost you about $100,000 right now. My goal is with my own portfolio is to 10x my crypto net worth in 2018, at least. So here's the deal, right? So a lot of you, including my wife, have gotten my case about this because you're like, what happened to real assets, right? This is not investing. That's what I'll tell you. So when I talk about wealth, I say wealth is equal to leverage times the product of mass and velocity, right? So velocity, we know what that is, just turning over your money, the sort of the compounding interest thing. Leverage is using bank money, using other people's money. Mass is how much you put into your investments, right? Now, one of the things I hear from you often is, Buck, how can I make this happen quicker? Well, you can do a lot by, with leverage and velocity, but the surefire way to make it happen quicker is by creating more mass, by putting more money into the system, right? I'm not planning on speculating forever. I'm planning to speculate to make a lot of money while I can, because I think we have a window here in which regulations get too stifling and that sort of thing, where it's not going to be really possible to do it quite as easily anymore. This is speculating, right? This is speculating, but it is the way I always talk about it, doing it with people who you know, like, and trust, which is your community that you develop, which I've developed also with the help of some of the software that I'm using that's been pretty incredible. And I can talk about that a little bit in specific. I can't really talk specifically what the software is for some reasons, but I can, if you want to know, it's basically shooting it in December. It shot at like 80% accuracy. The two ICOs it recommended were both over 10,000% or 10x returns, 10,000%. Or 1,000% return, sorry. But many people, because of this, even though it's speculating and, it sounds dangerous and stuff, they're seeing what is possible here, right? And many of you and many people, including my own dad, have asked me if they could invest with me. And so after thinking about this for a long time, I've decided to start a fund for my own investors. So I'm doing a fund, and it's called Smart Fund One. Basically, there's a Reg D 506C, which means it's available only to accredited investors. The minimum investment for this fund is only going to be $25,000. Now, again, with comparable funds, I haven't seen anything with a minimum investment of less than $1 million, just because they don't want to waste their time with this. IRA money's fine. If you have a self-directed IRA, this is a security. So, but again, I am the last one who's ever going to, push you on this. I'm not going to push you on this because this is highly, highly speculative, right? It is a once in a lifetime opportunity in my view. You could literally make 10,000%, or you could lose it all, right? And so I'm already in this market for 7 figures, but I didn't start at 7 figures. I didn't start there. My total investment in the market was $100,000. So obviously I believe in it personally. So the way it's going to work is the fund will, it's going to be limited to $1 million, first of all. So I don't want it to be a gigantic fund. The fund is basically going to get into the market. As most of you know, you've got to enter from fiat currency to one of the major coins. It'll be either Bitcoin or Ethereum based on, what's a better buy. Right now, Bitcoin's probably a better buy because Ethereum is holding its own. And then we're going to enter this market, and then we're going to trade exclusively for altcoins, including non-security ICOs. And what I mean by that is I talked about these ICOs that are happening. For example, you've got T0, which was Patrick Byrne's ICO through Overstock.com. Well, that was actually a security. I went through the whole process, and it was kind of a pain. It was, a massive bureaucratic mess. But the other thing is that they have this big hold time and everything on there. And then the coins were selling for like $10 a coin. I mean, it's just like in order to 10x, you had to get to 100. And I'm just not willing to wait that long right now. When things get tight and I can't do what we can with non-security ICOs, I'm happy to invest that way. But right now it's too cumbersome. So non-security ICOs are basically ones that are not issued as securities. They're issued basically as tokens. So you don't need to go through the process. So how am I going to do the selection of altcoins? Well, basically, it's going to be no different than the way I've done it up to now. Okay, as you know, probably I am an insatiable researcher, and I stay up nights looking at information, looking at teams and projects. During this process, as you probably figured out, even just listening to my podcast, I've developed a fairly significant insider network, artificial and crowd intelligence. And again, we're going to focus on altcoins, non-security ICOs. Now, the way I've set up this fund, I think is incredibly fair, just because, compared to your typical big hedge funds, we're basically doing a 70-30 split and 2% fees on top of that. So what I'm doing here is there's no fees. There's no promote fees. There's no fees at all. In fact, until you get at least 20% profit, the manager, the GP side gets nothing, 20%. And, it's basically I'm working for free. From 21 to doubling your money, there's only 10% to the management team. And then only after you double your money, it goes to 80-20. I'm not going to make any predictions, but I'm up 1,000% right now in 4 months. Is that going to happen for us in this fund? I don't know, but I know it's possible because I've done it. And this was even before I had some of the technology and stuff I have to do it all right now. So now this fund will last up to 18 months, but in reality, I don't think it'll even last that long, because what I'd like to do is end it and start another one. We're not going to be thinking about taxes too much here in reality, because as much as I'd like to, what we're really trying to do is just create huge profits. That's what we're really trying to do. And, if we have to pay a bunch of taxes, we'll do that. But, that'll be a good problem to have if we get where we want to be. And so what I'd like to do is more than likely end the fund to give you time to get your money back and then file for taxes and pay with it. So right now, I feel like the market And I should point out the reason for the 18 months is that if there's just massive momentum, then maybe we keep going and, we might just sell off a little bit so that people can pay taxes. But the thing about what I'm concerned about is between now and the 18 months is that, listen, the powers that be, namely the banks, right? Like Jamie Dimon, all these guys, they don't like this stuff. It's pulling money away from them. It's threatening their very existence, right? They're going to do whatever it takes to throw handcuffs on this stuff. And I think that it's going to be increasingly difficult to maneuver and do what I'm currently doing. I think the laws will become more unfavorable. And if that happens, even before, say, 12 months, then we'll just terminate and we'll have the money that we made and we'll call it a day. Right? We just don't want to get things too complicated, but I just think it's a tremendous opportunity. So again, let me emphasize this because I am not going to pull pull anybody into this deal. You should only invest, excuse me, money into this fund that you were okay losing. That's it. So the way I justified it is this. Okay, I drive around in a Prius. And I know some people are like, yeah, California drives Prius. Well, I bought the thing in 2009 when gas was like $5 a gallon and I was a resident. So it was a very smart thing for me at the time, but it still works. And I could go easily buy a Maserati or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to do that right now. $100,000. Okay, I'm skipping a doodad this year. Think of this as a doodad because I guarantee you one thing: if you bought a brand new BMW, you're not going to make any money with that. That's a guarantee, right? So another benefit of this fund, I will say that we will have access to regular calls and discuss upcoming crypto-related issues and investments. This is important because some of the things we'll be talking about are things that we're actually not going to invest in the fund. So, for example, T0 is a great example of this. I think it would have been a great investment, but it's not something the fund would do because it was considered a security. But for accredited investors, great opportunity, and especially if you're willing just to hold on, I think it's going to be something that is really big. But that's not something we would do. Also, we'll talk about upcoming ICOs that we'll actually invest in, so that if people really like the opportunities enough, they can actually double down with their own money if they want to do that. Again, I'm not encouraging any of this. I just think for those of you who are already into crypto, you know how addicting this can get. So this is going to give us an opportunity to sort of exchange ideas and that sort of thing as well. So now this is time sensitive, right? I really would, I wanted to do this several weeks ago, but I've been displaced by, I've had all sorts of natural disasters around me, including fires and mudslides and that sort of thing. So it slowed me down a little bit, but the market has been slow this last month because of all of these, things that make people come out and say Bitcoin is dead. Well, it's not dead. It's not going to die. It's a great time to buy is what it is. And so we need to get in ASAP because, and again, I don't know how long we'll be able to do and participate in these ICOs so easily without regulations as well. And so once I send, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to send out that OM to anybody who sends me interest, and I'm going to need commitments as soon as possible. And again, we're going to limit this fund to $1 million. So remember, again, this is a highly speculative, but could also make life-changing amounts of money. And I'm totally serious about that. I mean, it really could. And then invest only what you feel comfortable losing. Doodad money. Here's my email for the OM. In the meantime, I'm going to, before we start questions, I want to just give you one example of an interesting project. And for those of you who are already in cryptocurrency, if you've not heard of this project, I want, here's a little tip of a great play that you could consider. Let's see, I'm going to have Phil put on this video for a project or in a coin called VeChain that you can actually buy right now. Go ahead.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, counterfeits exist all over. Manufacturers tried branding their products. This was the oldest anti-counterfeiting system, with business activity enriched than ever. Battle against counterfeits has been escalating. For example, in 1854, a legend in France invented a legendary trunk. ID are born to the world, but the problem is still there. Counterfeits continue to exist. Is there an ultimate solution? The answer needs two factors: identification and verification. First, identification must be unique and copy-proof. Barcode, QR code, RFID are all replicable, pass, while NFC could be encrypted and verified. Put a tag for each product, add tag information to database, and verify by tag. However, tag get copied, fail. System and data get breached, still fail. Spent a big money to have a security fortress, but caused big trouble for users to access. Epic fail. Are we really running out of options for that? No. Here's VeChain, a verification solution built on blockchain, the inconceivable technology from the dark side of the Force, with encrypted NFC together. VeChain make it easy to wipe out counterfeits. Then what is blockchain? Blockchain is the technology base on the cryptography. A trust-free public ledger is established among the decentralized data nodes. The system data is securely and redundantly stored, with sequential timestamps. The whole system is running on a specific consensus. The data is immutable to change and fully traceable to origin. Attacking even multiple nodes does not affect the entire system. In conclusion, blockchain is unbreakable decentralized. Retailers, custom, inspection, and consumers. Everyone can be involved. Manufacturing, distribution, supply chain, retailing, inspection, consumption can all be connected. VeChain, a blockchain cloud platform for digital verification.
I bring, hold on. Oh yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's just one project. I've been talking to myself for a little bit, I guess, because Phil hadn't turned me on, but that's just one project. Is super cool. Look that project up if you're interested. By the way, it's right now. Even if you're if you're not going to be in this fund, that's fine. VeChain dipped down, I think, below $6 a few days ago. This is a project. Look at the partners on that. Okay. The partners on VeChain, and it'll blow you away. I mean, the list includes the Chinese government, by the way. So that tells you how big of a deal that is. In terms of so those are the types of coins that we'll be investing in. We'll be investing in ICOs and then altcoins, which I think that have huge opportunity. And this one, a lot of major players are behind it, like Roger Ver, Bitcoin Jesus, etc. So anyway, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to answer questions for you. And so, but and no pressure, but I want to let you know we already have $300,000 in commitments already, and we're capped at $1 million. So I want to make sure. Okay, let's see. Questions, anyone? No? Okay, let's see. Ashgraph. A lot of comments here. No questions, huh? Wait a few more minutes to see if anybody has any questions. Everybody knows everything about this or what? All right. Okay, let's see. How will you get around the fact that the Americans aren't allowed to invest in ICOs? But that's actually not true. It's a good question. It's not true. But I was in Wax Token, for example. Wax Token was in October, and basically, that was it's an American company, owns Opskins, which is a biggest one of these big gamer things. You can look that up. And I invested 50 grand in that, and I 10x. So for a while I like 40x, but I had 10x. That is one example. But you're right, that's the type of regulations that are continuing to become a problem. So those are the types of things that we're going to have to avoid. Now, if there are coins where they're if there are ICOs that are not American, for example, I can tell you about them. I can tell you if there are ways that you can potentially get around the American stuff, but the fund won't be able to do that. The fund will just have to wait until the ICO becomes a coin that's traded in the U.S. or not in the U.S., just traded on a platform. So as soon as they get off of the ICO, they get distributed, and then they go on. They might go on to Binance or Bittrex or one of these platforms, and then we start trading for them. So that's basically that's how it works. Okay, so now there's a lot more questions here. Let's see. So that, Eric, hey, how are you? Let's see, Lee, how quickly is the money needed? I want to try to, part of it is I'm trying to speed everything up. As soon as Mauricio gets me this offering memorandum, and that he's supposed to get it to me today. As soon as I get that, it's something I would like to get done next week, frankly, because I think we'll still have a little bit of time to buy next week. But I just, this market, in my view, is just not going to stay suppressed. We've seen this a million times with Bitcoin, and it always comes out. It comes out exploding after its dip. So next week, hopefully we're going to get this all done, especially since we're already, looks like we have $300,000 in commitments already. I think we're probably going to move pretty quickly. William wants to know about the AI. How does it pick up ICO? So the AI that I'm using, and it's not that I don't want to tell people, but there's some reasons, proprietary reasons I don't want to, and I don't want to violate any laws and whatever, but basically the way it picks it up is that it's a hybrid crowdfunding. It's a hybrid crowd data mixed with artificial intelligence, and then it's mixed in with some of the experts in the area, and it spits out where all the hype is, and then it adds in where the team is. It adds in a lot of the numbers, and it spits out top ICOs. And again, what's really interesting about it is that in December, the ICOs that have picked up, and I was not in these, but they both 10x'd. And the first one in January, unfortunately, were not available to the U.S., to Americans. But there is one that I'm currently in that is available to Americans. So hopefully we can get this fund together and get into that in time. So Royce, what is the minimum investment in this fund? So basically it's 25K. Yeah. So Royce, yeah. Mike, how will payouts and distributions of your fund happen? So Mike, good question. I should have mentioned it. Basically it's going to be one lump sum. We're just going to hold on and reinvest in this thing until, the time is right. And I'm thinking the chances are that this is a 1-year fund. We start in February, we end in February, we get K1s next February, something like that. But if I anticipate that for some reason regulations are coming, there's some kind of like weird South Korean stuff going on, it's going to drive the markets down, then we'll get out early and then we'll just sit on the sidelines and wait for an opportunity and, distribute when we can. But we just make money while we can, And by the way, I should point out, there probably will be a second fund that launched as soon as the first one ends. And it might even overlap with the first one, depending on how the first thing goes. So let's see. Is the fund only open to U.S. investors? Luca, where are you from? I think we have to prove you're an accredited investor. That's the only issue. So we'll have to figure that part out. I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to ask Mauricio. Mark, but yeah, definitely send me a question. If you're Canadian or something like that, if there's a way to prove you're an accredited investor, that's fine. Mark, tax implications with this new tax overhaul. Well, it's a good question, Mark. And so the crypto guys got kind of the shaft from the Trump administration and the tax overhaul because, we were sort of the sacrificial lamb in this. The way it worked before 2018 was everything was like a 1031 exchange. You went from one asset to another. It was a 1031 exchange. And so you didn't have to pay taxes until you went back into fiat, right? That's not the case anymore. The way it works now is that every time there's a trade, there is taxes. And so that's why I'm mindful of that, because I don't want anybody to end up with, a tax bill that's literally 5 times as big as their initial investment and their money sitting in the account. So we'll figure out ways around that. But again, I'm hoping that's going to be a problem that we're all going to want to have. So Bruce says, I can check with my CPA, but I would assume if I invest with self-directed Roth IRA would be, oh yeah. I don't see how it wouldn't be, Bruce. We're not using leverage. We're not doing it. It's basically a security. Once you're in the fund, it's a security. So that's why I didn't even ask Mauricio about that, but it's set up as a security. So there really should be no issue. Todd, I was told that due to the cost of the transactions and the time involved with blockchain. So Todd, that's a very good question. And believe me, if that happens, you're going to be very happy. You're going to be very, very happy because we're going to double down on Hashgraph and we're going to make a lot of money. And I am totally tapped into what's going on with Hashgraph. And I will be probably one of the first people to know if there is an ICO there. So the problem with Hashgraph right now is that there is no public ledger. And until Hashgraph does that, they're not going to replace anybody. And beyond that, once Hashgraph happens, it's going to take a long time for these projects to develop so that, instead of these things happening on blockchains, that it's going to happen on Hashgraph distributed ledger technology. So this is not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's a fantastic question. And I'm assuming maybe you know about Hashgraph from before, but that's I sent that video up from Maloney. Hopefully everybody watch it. By the way, I also sent out to my private group, which is the private group is a Silver Circle. That's people who've invested with me before Wax Token. I sent that information out to everybody saying I'm investing in this ICO. Nobody went and did it. All right. It ended up being 10x in 2 months. So, all right. What is the ICO that I'm currently in? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm not in an ICO right now. And right now I'm not really at this point disclosing publicly what ICOs that the fund will be doing or anything from the AI at this point. There are ways to change your VPN to invest in ICOs that prohibit us. And there are way. I'm not sure what this means. Does you know what this means? To invest. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. William, that's right. And if you're talking about it on an individual basis, you're right. The challenge is, I think, with a fund, when I become a fiduciary of your money, I have to be careful not to do anything against the law. So that's the problem. So that's where the group is going to come in handy, because I may very well say, hey guys, you have here's this fantastic opportunity. It's not open to the US. So maybe you have a relative in Canada, or a media director who has a passport in Hong Kong and the UK. Not that that would be me, but Aaron, what about investing in Hashgraph? No question about it, Aaron. If we have an opportunity to invest in Hashgraph, we will. The problem with is that Hashgraph, I think, is making a very, very grand entrance into the space. I do believe that they will do I do believe that they're going to do a public ledger. I do believe at some point there will be an ICO, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And when they do, it's going to be hard to get into that ICO, but it won't matter, because if you buy within the first few days where it's publicly traded, you're still going to become a millionaire. So let's see, Luca, you live in Ireland. Yeah, we'll just have to figure out. Shoot me an email if there's a way to prove you're an accredited investor in the US. That's the only thing that we really need, because it's a 506c. Eric, can you invest with a self-directed 401k? If you're talking about a solo 401k, I believe that should be just fine. We don't have many of those. We're just limited, I think, to 25% of ERISA funds. Yaron, I invested in Wax, but only 5K. Wish I did more. No kidding, right, man? Did you invest in, Yaron, well, you didn't do 5K for the ICO, I assume, because that was a $50,000 minimum. By the way, that's one of the advantages of this fund, right? So some of these American ones are requiring like a $50,000 limit. Now this, you may not feel comfortable going into an initial coin offering for $50,000, right? So I put in $50,000 in Wax, and at one point was worth $4 million. Now now it's dipped, but I have no doubt it's going to be worth, a couple $1 million, probably by the end of 2018, just because the project is phenomenal. It's not a purely speculative move. Anyway, that's it for questions. So hopefully you enjoyed something, or you learned something. And again, I want to just be clear about this. This is a highly speculative fund. Only use money that you were going to spend on something like a car or boat or something like that. Please do not put money that you need into this fund. All right. Because I feel very confident that we're going to make money. I feel very confident. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a 20% pref and only do 10% on the first 100%. Right. But this is the wild, wild west, and it's really fun, but we could lose money. I mean, how do we lose everything? I don't know, but it's something that could theoretically happen. So, but on the other hand, it could be the most profitable thing you've ever done. It's quite possible that could be the case as well. So that said, everybody who has already sent me a note about getting the OM, I'll send that to you as soon as possible. Also, please only send me like money amounts if you're like pretty much 100% sure that you're in, because I don't want to come back and correct things after we get to 1 million. I just want to get it done and moving. So, okay. All right. Thanks everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And by the way, one more thing, for those of you who are out there who are maybe not accredited, and I always feel bad about this, I am gonna record some videos that show you, basically how to just buy stuff off of Coinbase and how to do some trading, some basic trading, and put a few bucks in there. I mean, again, I'm not giving you financial advice, but if you don't want to spend a lot of time, just track some coins or something like that, the top market cap ones, and chances are you're going to make money. So, all right, that's it. Thanks, everybody.